Tulsi Gabbard, she put out a video I think is incredible. One of the things about Tulsi Gabbard is making her campaign so attractive is not just her stances, but the way that her team put together video content and commercials on a small budget, but it's so quality. And it's not because it's a bunch of special effects and great people running around in it. It's no Samuel L. Jackson making cameos.
It's really important that Colin wins so the Dems can take back the House.
Or Robert De Niro peeking in.
Talks how he wants to punch people in the face. Well, I'd like to punch him in the face.
But what it has substance. Hard, unrelenting, unvarnished truth.
President Trump promised us during his campaign to get the United States out of stupid wars.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
We will stop racing to topple foreign regimes that we know nothing about.
But he's on the brink of launching a very stupid and costly war with Iran. We have to stop President Trump from starting a war with Iran. And the president is listening to his national security advisor, John Bolton, and other war hawks in his administration who have championed the war with Iraq in the past and who've been pushing for war with Iran for years.
Our goal should be regime change in Iran.
There is a viable opposition to the rule of the Ayatollahs. The only solution is to change the regime itself.
Bolton and others lied to us about the war in Iraq. They said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and that he was going to give them to al-Qaeda. Now that war was devastating. Over 4,000 of my brothers and sisters in uniform were killed. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians killed. Trillions of our taxpayer dollars wasted. And al-Qaeda and ISIS were strengthened. But to this day, John Bolton says that that disastrous war in Iraq was the right decision.
I don't think there's any question that the decision to overthrow Saddam Hussein was the correct decision.
So now we're being lied to again, as Bolton and Trump push us closer and closer to a war with Iran that would prove far more costly and devastating than anything we experienced in Iraq. It would result in far more American troops being killed and injured, cause great suffering for the Iranian people and others in the region. It would exacerbate the refugee crisis in Europe and risk direct U.S. conflict with Russia, conflict that could easily lead to nuclear war. So join me in sending a strong message to Donald Trump. The U.S. must not go to war with Iran.
All right, I love that commercial, and kudos to her team, Team Tulsi, doing a very good job of getting the word out. What I love most about it is it uses Donald Trump's own words against him. Yeah, it's not a bunch of rhetoric and throwing stuff against the wall and see what can be more punishing. Unlike, I mean, Joe Biden, his little campaign video, launched this campaign with the Charlotte thing, which is old news. I want to hear what you have to say about what's going on currently.
Supremacists and neo-Nazis come out in the open. Their crazed faces, illuminated by torches, veins bulging and bearing the fangs of racism, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile heard across Europe in the 30s.
Sir, Charlottesville was years ago. Though tragic, though a horrific moment in our history, it is in our history. We're talking about what's happening now. Well, we all know Joe Biden couldn't make a video like this because Joe Biden will support any engagement we go into, as has been in his past. Joe Biden is from those exact crop of people like John Bolton who favor war. So anyway, Donald Trump, he ran on ending these wars. He ran on redirecting our focus on America and away from costly wars, regime change wars. How many people remember that? I don't think you do. I don't think all of us do, but some of us do. And see, this is another reason why I support, as I stated before, people going on Fox News to try to talk to people who watch Fox News. Because not everybody who voted for Donald Trump is crazy. You might think they are, but they aren't. My point is, there are people who believe that Donald Trump would be an outsider and he would do what he said he was going to do. What's most compelling about this video and about Tulsi's stances on Iran is that, well, there's no real reason why they say they need to go into Iran?
I didn't get that.
I said there's no real reason why they say they need to go into Iran. They just want to do it because they think they can do it. That's the thing, guys. So Tulsi Gabbard is absolutely right. I mean, ever since, what was it, Operation Persian Gulf, the Desert Storm, when they went in and Iraq and Iran split off, and then you get this situation. And back then, America was funding Iraq and Saddam Hussein. See, that's the kicker to all of this. I look forward to an opportunity to talk to Tulsi Gabbard about her stance on Iran. I'm aware the main focus is oil, it is money, it is resources. So once again, Tulsi Gabbard's team did a great job of sending home that message. Now, Bernie Sanders also talked about Iran and the need to avoid war there. Let's check that out.
Going into Iran. What's more is 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, good to see you again. You are quite worried, more worried than the Pentagon says you should be, about troops, American troops going into Iran. What's your concern?
Ali, I believe that if we go into Iran, we will destabilize the entire region, and we will be in war for decade after decade, which will cost us thousands of lives for our troops, as well as God knows what happens in terms of how many people die in the region. It is almost impossible to imagine that after the horror of the war in Iraq, when we were lied to by the Bush administration, and one of the leading architects of that war, by the way, was this very same John Bolton, who remains one of the few people in the world who actually thinks today that the war in Iraq was a good idea, that we would once again go to war in that region. So what I am working hard on is to continue the work that I and some conservative Republicans did, and that is to remind Congress and to remind the President that it is the U.S. Congress under our Constitution, not the President, who decides when we go to war. So we're looking now to get 51 senators and a majority in the House to say to this President, you are not going to war in Iran or any place else without congressional authority, and we ain't going to give you that authority.
But it was Congress that ultimately agreed to the Iran deal, and the goal there was to try and get Iran back into the international community and economically engaged, so that it would think that it was more valuable to stay economically engaged with the world than to saber rattle and misbehave in the region. What do you say to people who say this is preventative, this is a worst case scenario in case Iran attacks American soldiers, American troops, or uses its proxies to do so?
First of all, Ali, you will remember how we got into the Vietnam War through the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, and it turns out that the so-called attack in the Gulf of Tonkin did not actually take place. It was based on a series of lies. But what worries me is that the architect of the effort now to get us into a war in Iran is the guy who was the architect to getting us into the war in Iraq, and that is John Bolton. So, you know, I worry about provocations on the part of the United States against Iran, and I worry very much that this thing could flare up. So I think, again, that a war in Iran would be an absolute disaster, never-ending war, huge amounts of money, loss of lives, and what the Congress has got to do is have a serious discussion about how we deal with that region. Now, I, for the life of me, have never understood why it was that the United States determined that Saudi Arabia, which is a despotic, murderous, undemocratic regime, is our great friend, and Iran is all that terrible. Obviously, we have many, many concerns about Iran. But let me tell you, Iraq is not, you know, one of the great humanitarian regimes on this planet. The function of the United States, the most powerful nation on earth now, and our president, should be to bring Iran, bring to bring Saudi Arabia and Iran into a room together and to begin serious negotiations about how we can calm the tensions in that region, not inflame them, not threaten to go to war.
Yeah, that's what you would think should be a president's job, not to take us to war. But there's so much money to be made by going to war. That's why they want to do it. That's why they're reluctant to get into that room. In fact, they criticize people like Tulsi Gabbard for even wanting to have conversations that do not lead to war. Only time that they're even respectful to Donald Trump, even want to give him the time of day, is when he is doing what? Drone attacks. Then Brian Williams will do a serenade to the bombs. You know, and this all brings up a question, something I was thinking as I was watching this segment earlier, watching that particular clip from Bernie, and Tulsi's earlier as well. I was thinking, I wonder if Donald Trump really had intentions to bring the troops home. I wonder if Donald Trump was being sincere when he said he wanted to end these wars. Like, I really have no way of knowing it, right? Maybe it's the forces, the powers that be, that sort of change your mind about what you want to do once you get in the office. I mean, I know it's very easy to say, you know, Donald Trump just lied to everybody. Oh, he made it up. You know, he just said that to get elected. It's very easy to take that type of stance, but is that based on anything that you can actually point to? You know, I'm just not certain. You know, we got to get rid of Donald Trump in order to find out. And we have to get either Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders in the Oval Office, because that's the only way I will know. And I think a lot of progressives and a lot of independents and a lot of people who don't even claim a party or any group, just want truth and just want peace. I think that's the only way we're really going to know what's going on. Because if Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard were to go another way, then I would go, you know what? There's a coercion. I mean, because at the end of the day, man, somebody's got to look at that Ned Flanders dead-eyed and say, look, Bolton, you son of a, right? Like, why is he there? And don't tell me, like, Donald Trump, you know, a lot of people in his cabinet, I don't understand. Like, I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but why would you run on ending wars? Why would you get the guy, and we got you on tape several times saying Iraq was a horrible mistake, and then you get a guy, now we got a guy, your chief advisor is the guy who architected that whole thing. He quarterbacked that whole invasion. It just doesn't make sense. It's not adding up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some of your military advisors are urging you to keep a contingent of U.S. troops in Syria to ensure the defeat of ISIS. What is your current thinking on this subject? Do you still want them out?
But it's very costly for our country, and it helps other countries a hell of a lot more than it helps us. So we're going to be making a decision. We've had a tremendous military success against ISIS, as you know. It's close to 100%, as I just said. And we'll be making a decision as to what we do in the very near future. We'll be consulting also with the groups of our people and groups of our allies. Okay?
So you're inclined to pull the troops out?
Say it?
You're inclined to pull the troops out?
I want to get out. I want to bring our troops back home. I want to start rebuilding our nation. We will have, as of 3 months ago, $7 trillion in the Middle East over the last 17 years. We get nothing out of it, nothing. And as you remember, in civilian life, for years, I said, keep the oil. I was always saying, keep the oil. We didn't keep the oil. Who got the oil? Was ISIS got the oil, a lot of it. That's what funded their campaigns. They took a lot of the oil, and it was largely responsible for funding. We should have kept the oil then. We didn't keep the oil. So I want to get back. I want to rebuild our nation. Think of it, $7 trillion over a 17-year period. We have nothing except death and destruction. It's a horrible thing. So it's time. It's time. We were very successful against ISIS. We'll be successful against anybody militarily. But sometimes it's time to come back home. And we're thinking about that very seriously. Okay? Thank you.
So, like I said, it's very easy for people to sit back and say Donald Trump is a liar. Donald Trump planned this all. It was just to get in the office. That makes things real simple and tidy. But I think the reality may be a little bit different. Maybe.